Welcome to the Football Reporters. I'm Luis Miguel Echegaray. Today, 16th of October, marks 20 years since Lionel Messi made his first team debut for Barcelona. Barcelona was never the same again. Messi was never the same again. And this game of ours was definitely never the same again. I've got some of the people who have watched Leo's career closest to discuss his journey, his incredible career with his multiple clubs, including, of course, Barcelona, and also to discuss when was peak Messi. Sam Marsden, Graham Hunter, Rob Palmer, and Rodrigo Faez join LME. And thank you so much for joining us to discuss this incredible career. Let's start where it all began for Messi. In the first team, promoted from Barcelona B, he obviously arrives as a 13-year-old, has to wait a few years to integrate himself in the academy, and Frank Rijkaard arrives, and it's an unbelievable introduction. What do you all remember about the buzz around this young Argentinian from Rosario before his debut?
Can I be the first to say that I misinterpreted it? A friend of mine who's currently the manager for Christian Pulisic was interested in signing up the Barca B captain Arnau Riera, and there was a buzz, like you say, in the city. It was huge that a phenomenon was coming, and everybody will echo this. You learn to take that with a pinch of salt. But I went with my friend, who's godfather to my daughter, to look at Arnau Riera, captain in Barca B. I saw Messi playing right wing in a 4-2-3-1, and I came away thinking, wow, that Joan Verdu is a fantastic player. Who's playing at 10 that day? Messi kind of sulked a little bit. He didn't like playing out wide. He wandered through the game, didn't do special things. And I came away thinking, wow, I wonder if this hype is just a little bit overextended, or maybe I caught him on a bad day. There was ample proof afterwards, LME, about which of those two it was. But I remember Barca B, mini stadium, thinking, wow, that wasn't a great first introduction.
It definitely took a little time for folks to just realize just how great it was. So specifically, I'm wondering, because of obviously the system in which Barcelona liked to work under, and this was a boy that really just liked to have the ball at his feet and just create mayhem. But yes, it really was unbelievable. What a great story to see that you noticed that from the beginning. Let's keep going here. He makes his debut as a sub, replacing Deco in the final minutes of the Catalan derby on the 16th of October, 2004. Well, he doesn't end up playing much for the first team all season. He does score his first goal against Albacete as Barcelona win the Liga. Ronaldinho with the assist, and it's a great chip. It's late in the game. During the summer of 2005, then he turns 18 and signs a new contract to 2010 with a release clause of 150 million euros. And before, just 3 months later, signing a further extension to 2014. Sam Marsden, he just almost end up leaving on loan that summer, though, right?
This is before that famous Gamper game, right, against Juventus, when he comes on, and I wasn't reporting at the time, but historically there's stories, that Juventus, I think Capello's even spoke about wanting him after that game, perhaps, and there was other talks and stuff before at the time, and obviously he came on in that Gamper game, and it's remembered as one of the big sort of breakout moments or sort of key moments in his early career.
But to pick up, at least from Sam, if I'm better placed, it's because when I was there, I was at the Gamper game, I was living in Barcelona, it's because I'm Scottish. It's as simple as that. Because there's a great legend of my club, Aberdeen, Scotland international, Alex McLeish, who was then the Rangers manager. And he had a Dutch international, Jan Wouters, as his number 2. And the Barca's Dutch legendary, brilliant footballer, Frank Rijkaard, had Henk ten Kaat as his assistant. And this tiny, spindly little kid with too much talent for his body was breaking through. And because of a game called Football Manager, McLeish's son had spotted Messi long before he made his debut for the first team. And now I don't play the game, but that seems to me to be supernatural. And he was pestering his father, the manager of Glasgow Rangers, find out about Messi. Phoned Wouters, the Rangers assistant, phoned ten Kaat and said, we want to take Leo Messi on loan. And they scratched their chins a little bit about it and decided that Messi was a little too small for the rough, aggressive, nasty, harsh accent in Scottish football. But they said, why don't you take this Iniesta instead? Because we don't know what to do with him. There was a big division in the board, and I've spoken to both ten Kaat and Chicky Piquerestein, and Ferran Soriano, about huge arguments that started with Glasgow Rangers trying to take Lionel Messi on loan. And I'll flip one little detail too, because the magic, given I was the idiot who went to the B team game and came away going, no, I'm not so sure. That Albacete match, I was up in the gods with my little daughter, watching as, if you remember, against Albacete with Balbuena and goals, Ronaldinho, it's late on, Barca might win the title for the first time in 6 years. They have to win this game. The goal, Eto scores first. But to seal the game, on comes Messi. And it's exactly Ronaldinho in midfield, flip pass, and Messi lobbing the goal. And it's given offside, totally incorrectly. And the two of them just do the exact same thing. Again, blade of grass for blade of grass, 4 minutes later. And at that point, and he jumps on Ronaldinho's piggyback celebration, right? And that's the moment where everybody watching TV, it doesn't matter where you're watching in the world, in the Camp Nou, you go, yeah, okay. These two are special as a partnership, and this kid looks pretty sexy.
Unbelievable. And Rob, did you comment on that game? Did you commentate that one?
Yeah, I commentated on his debut, and it's interesting. I used to read the stuff that Graham was writing from Spain, and he used to kind of doing the commentaries from abroad. He used to take in everything that was saying. We had a lot of kind of messiahs arrive over the last 20 years in Spain. I think I've commentated on most of them. But there was such a hype about it when he came into the team. And as Graham said, he came in and it wasn't like it didn't explode onto the scene that season. I was surprised that he made his debut in October, didn't score his first goal until May. He was very much in the shadow of Ronaldinho. I always think he's like being the lead singer of Queen and trying to follow Freddie Mercury on the stage. And, you're Ronaldinho there and he's playing his tricks and he's centre stage. And he was very much the small kid in the playground where they've got this big kid showing off and bullying the opposition. But the goal that Graham's talking about at the end of the season against Albacete, where he jumps on his back, and it's almost like Messi has been accepted into this Barcelona team, because you think about when Xavi and Iniesta took them 2 or 3 seasons to fully establish themselves in the Real Madrid team. Took Messi quite a while to actually prove that he was, the new goal, the second coming, the first coming of Lionel Messi. So yeah, commentated on that one at the end of the season, and that's when you realise that he's passed the test now. He's okay. He's going to be here for next season, here for the next campaign as well. And the fact that Ronaldinho what did Ronaldinho famously say when he won the World Player of the Year? I'm not even the best player in the Barcelona team, and that was homage to the kid that was coming through.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Ronaldinho, because he was very important in this stage for Messi. Messi felt very uncomfortable. He's an introvert by nature, was obviously still missing his home in Argentina, and Ronaldinho made sure to take care of him. And he said after he scored that first goal, Ronaldinho says, I'm sure he will never remember. He'll just remember the goal, but I really hope he remembers who passed him the ball, because, that they built quite a friendship. But 2005, 2006 sees Rijkaard's Barcelona win La Liga and the Champions League. Messi plays a small role with 8 goals in 25 appearances in all competitions, missing the rest of the season after getting injured in early March. In 2006 and 2007, we saw Messi's, real coming out party, and it came in the form of a hat trick in El Clásico. Rob, I want to come back for you here because you were in commentary for that game. What do you remember about it?
I've got to be honest, I don't remember yesterday, but I've gone back and looked at the videos and remember that. I mean, you're playing against Real Madrid. Nobody, I think I'm right in saying, has scored a hat-trick in a Clásico for 12 years at that point. To score 1 goal in a Clásico, 2 goals in a Clásico was quite a feat. But to score a hat-trick was something that people thought probably never going to happen again, given the talent that was on the pitch. But I remember him ghosting around, particularly Sergio Ramos, who I think he gave a nightmare to when they were playing youth football, because they were pretty much the same age, and Ramos had the misfortune of coming up against him on youth pitches and B-team pitches as well. And to put people like Ramos, and I think Alguero might have been there as well, on the seat of their pants, and make world-class top defenders at the peak of their powers sit on their backsides and whiz in between them. And I think that was the first time that we realised, you say that the first couple of seasons, he wasn't scoring goals for fun. It's almost a goal per game over his career. But at that point, he was playing catch-up. And you were just seeing it was then like the second coming of Maradona. And he was doing it on the biggest stage, the biggest game in the world, against some of the best players as well, and making those Real Madrid players look far less than ordinary. Did they know what was to come for the next 15 years or so?
Yeah, Rodri, I mean, as somebody that obviously covers La Liga extensively, including Real Madrid as well, like, what was the sentiment around that time? Because we're talking about, just like Rob was saying, you know, he's putting himself out there on the world stage, but now he's doing it against Real Madrid. Like, what was the sentiment around it? And not just from the players, but also the fan base and the media that surrounds the Madrid faithful.
I think my whole generation by that time, we were wondering what will be his next step, because after facing Real Madrid, we realized that he was going to be massive, but maybe not that massive that he became after, you know, maybe 1-2 years after making his first home debut. At that time, even I remember talking to a Real Madrid defender, and he replied me, this guy is going to crack it all. Because for him, from his point of view, there were no intentions in order to say, okay, I can't stop this guy, and he's starting now his career. You know, and he was wondering maybe in 2, 3, 4 years' time, how could they stop him? And that was interesting, because they were coming off the Ronaldinho era, and now they were like, okay, after Ronaldinho, we know how he ended up at Barcelona. Now we're going to be released by those Barcelona big idols, and we're going to be free to win again. But suddenly Messi arrived, and they were like a bit desperate in that kind, you know? And
here's the thing. Frank Rijkaard was obviously the first senior manager that gave him a shot at Barcelona, but 2007 and 2008 season is blighted by a couple of multi-game injury layoffs. Barcelona finished third in La Liga, and Rijkaard eventually is sacked, and he is replaced by Pep Guardiola. And at the start of 2008 and 2009, Messi is now 21. He also inherits the famous number 10 shirt, as Rodrigo was saying, you know, the post-Ronaldinho era, who leaves for AC Milan. And this season, his first season with Guardiola, is one of the seasons, Graham, that is in contention for being one of Messi's greatest. 39 goals, 19 assists, 51 games, Copa del Rey, La Liga, Champions League titles, top scorer in Champions League, and named the best player in La Liga, 21 years old. What changed for Messi when Pep arrived?
One of the guys can pick the thing you're guiding us towards, which is a change of position in the Clasico and the light bulb moment for Guardiola. I want to opt for a different change. I want to opt for somebody strongly going out to bat for him, and that's Guardiola, because people might or might not remember that at the beginning of that season, Guardiola takes over, throws out two of his great friends, throws out Deco, throws out Ronaldinho, your bad influences on this kid. That was the driving thing. There were other ideas, but he wanted to split the trio. Kept Silvinho, because he's a different influence altogether. But at that stage, Argentina selected Leo Messi for the Olympic Games. And Joan Laporta, the president, who'd had to be persuaded to appoint Pep Guardiola. He wasn't visionary. At first he wanted to retain Rijkaard. Then he went through a number of different candidates. They went and interviewed Jose Mourinho. So ultimately, the Laporta-Guardiola thing wasn't a tight bond. I love you, I respect you, you're my coach. No. And Guardiola went to the president and said, all this effort you've put in over the last few weeks, taking the case about whether Barcelona will or will not release Messi to go to the Olympics, and you've taken it to the court of arbitration in sport, you've gone to war with your player. I'm the coach. I'm telling you, we let him go. And he stood nose to nose with the president saying, this kid gets what he wants because I say so. Messi goes off to the Argentina World Cup campaign in Beijing, wins gold, plays well, comes back. Meantime, Barcelona have had to qualify for the Champions League. Okay, doing so against Polish opposition, but let's say they'd gone out. Guardiola's out the door. Messi gets punished by the president for having gone off and being selfish. Instead, what happens is there's an eternal bond between coach and player. Guardiola, having won gold, knew what it meant to him. It probably, I would argue, meant even more to an Argentinian. And suddenly there's this synthesis of genius talent who's about to flower in the biggest way, and ultra-demanding rules are rules, you do it my way coach, who bends and says, Leo, on you go, I believe in you, I'll support you, I'll fight the president for you. That sets the tone for what's about to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that relationship and trust was key, and people need to remember that there was a massive struggle for Messi to even be accepted as an Argentinian player, and the chance when he was finally able to represent his country at the Olympics. At that time, when he won that gold, he called it the most important trophy medal of his career, and Guardiola was essentially part of that. But let's focus on the other part that Graham was talking about, Sam, which is obviously there was that trust. Pep Guardiola came in. He also, in the summer of 2008, he implemented several new rules to enhance the team performance, training, healthy eating and stuff. But as a player on the pitch, how did Guardiola change Messi?
Yeah, well, it's like a combination of factors. Like you say, obviously there's different chapters to sort of Messi's career. In 2008-09, it's probably the start of sort of the second chapter after his debut in the Rijkaard years, when there were sort of injuries and stuff. Obviously, you touched on that 06 Champions League season when he was injured from March onwards. And if you go from Guardiola's first year until the end of his time at Barcelona, there's never a season where he plays fewer than 30 league games. That obviously comes down to changes to diet and preparation and etc. Obviously a little bit to do with the youth in the early years. But yeah, the Guardiola factor for me from the outside at the time was the big change in Messi, because as Graham touched on, you move on Ronaldinho and Deco and you give the keys to Messi. You say, look, we're building this team almost around you. He's got, guys around him like Xavi and Iniesta who are pivotal to Guardiola's style, who give him the ball in situations where he wants to be. And is it 08-09 the season with I've lost track of the years where I think it's detailed in Marty Penal's book, where Guardiola talks about, he has this sort of in the middle of the night before, I think it's the night before the game, isn't it, when he has this sort of feeling that Lionel Messi needs to come in from the right and play in this sort of false nine role, which wasn't really massively talked about or known at the time. I don't know if it was invented then or if it had been used before that time. Obviously, it's probably been used in different times, but Messi came in before the Clasico to play that position, which of course was also sort of, I guess we saw the numbers from this point onwards are just ridiculous. The numbers before for a young guy are decent. The numbers from this point onwards in terms of goals and assists under Guardiola are just completely ridiculous.
Can I give a throwaway line? Because it seemed odd, like Sam says, if you were old enough, and I know I nearly am, then people talk about the Hungarians at Wembley and false nine. And were the times when Michael Laudrup played that role? Yes. And I guess Totti at Roma, potentially you could say, just as Sam flagged, there are examples. Nothing has ever been as successful as this. And therefore, it must have been like a smoke-filled lab with Guardiola with his lab coat on and steam coming out. No, I once asked him, why did you? He said, I want to put Messi nearer to the goal. And sometimes football can be that simple. One of the great experiments, one of the great results from any experiment ever. On the day, he does it because he thinks Cannavaro and Diarra playing in central midfield, and he's got Metzelder. He thinks there's a big gap where Madrid's backline are slow and the midfield are slow. Put the kid in there and he'll torture them. And he did. But it stays almost forever because apparently putting Leo Messi closer to the goal mouth is a good idea.
You've got to realise it was a sliding doors moment in the world of football as well, because Pep Guardiola had to prove himself as a coach. He'd been a great player. Not a legendary player. He'd been the B team coach, and that season he was having to prove himself, and he had to find a way of getting. People talk about Thierry Henry as the best player ever in the Premier League. The guy came with an ego. Eto'o had an ego that filled the changing room as well, and he somehow had to find a way and a device to tell Henry and Eto'o that they were not going to be leading the line, and a lot of the emphasis was going to be on this little kid whose kit was a little bit too big for him, and they were going to have to be play second fiddle to him. And people talk about Eto'o and Henry in the Barcelona days, but that was when Pep Guardiola made one of the biggest decisions of his career. Barcelona used to have a very solid structure, that 4-3-3, but it became the Lionel Messi show that season as well, and that's why they won the treble that year, and that's when Messi really did establish himself. As you say, the seasons before, there'd been red cards, a little bit of indiscipline, bit of injuries as well, but as Sam was saying, thereafter hardly ever missed a chance, hardly ever missed a game.
Yeah, of course, including that Clásico in 2009, one of Barcelona's greatest matches, definitely, of course, under Pep Guardiola. Let's move on here because Rodri, he showed, let's talk about beyond La Liga. He showed he was a man for the big stage, scoring what he himself, Messi, calls the best goal of his career at that point in the Champions League final, a header against Manchester United. I mean, that was a remarkable performance, and I remember Sir Alex Ferguson saying that's the best team we've ever faced.
Yeah, I remember that night. It was for Leo Messi like the night, the perfect night, in order to say, "Here I am, and here I'm gonna stay forever." Because that was in Spain, we knew what he was able to do, but it was a lack of some, European or worldwide image for Leo Messi to say, "I will establish myself in the high level of football," and that was the perfect night in order to prove that. I don't really agree with Alex Ferguson, because I think in the Wembley final against Man United, I think Leo Messi proved that was even better. But that time, no one thought that he was going to be at that level. First of all, no one thought that he was going to be so perfect with all conditions that he was proving in his performances. And when you were facing that Manchester United, that for me was the top team worldwide, he was like, man, he's got everything. He's got everything, because he's not scoring with his right or left foot. He's scoring with a header, which is even more brilliant for a small guy like him. No, and I remember after the game, he was so smiley. He was enjoying that night, like maybe this is the last Champions League trophy that I got, but at the same time, it's like I want win more, and I need more, and I want to win more with this team, with Barcelona, against Man United or against Real Madrid or whoever team. Doesn't really matter, because I'm gonna prove the world that I'm here to stay and that I'm here to win every single trophy in my whole career. It was crazy.
Tiny anecdote. Years later, making a film, Take the Ball, Pass the Ball, I said to Xavi, why did you cross to the smallest man on the pitch? And he said, because he's the best header of the ball in our team. And then he went, in fact, he's the best at everything in our team. I said, well, goalkeeper? He said, well, we haven't tried yet. And that header, do you remember that night, that steamy hot night in Rome at the Olympic Stadium? They came out to Bocelli singing, and they'd seen a video made by Pep and some local TV station people about their families and the things the trials gone through. And they came up crying. And Victor Valdez said, we were in bits when we came up, but Messi took the game and led it away from Manchester United. Michael Carrick told me that he spent 6 or 7 months in a black depression because having lost that game, because they felt, like you said, I mean, that this was their time, that they were definitely going to win. And if you look at how they got there, you can understand it. And the final thing is, as he leaps up to score, he's between two giants, and he's facing a giant. It's Vidic and Ferdinand and Van der Sar, whose hand could go over the top of the crossbar if he wanted to. And Messi gets up and nods it over him in a parabola. It's a chilena with his head. And do you remember what happens? His boot drops off. He doesn't take his boot off in the celebration. People talk to me afterwards about how sometimes if a human being's going to be in an accident, your brain and the frame know what's going to happen, your physical frame, and everything contracts. So much pressure, so much anticipated joy was flooding through his system there that his foot contracted and his boot just fell off, Cinderella style. And he scores, he realizes he scores, picks up his boot, and off he goes, and we all go with him.
It's unbelievable. Obviously, heading back to that goal, and his performances in Pep's first season saw him awarded his first of 6 career Ballon d'Or awards, 2009, 2010. Sees Barcelona lose 1 game in La Liga on their way to 99 points and the title, just from a Cristiano Ronaldo-led Real Madrid. Messi himself hits 47 goals and 12 assists across 53 matches, including some incredible performances, 4 hat-tricks in La Liga and the Champions League. He hit a purple patch towards the end of the season, back-to-back hat-tricks in La Liga, followed by 4 goals against Arsenal in the Champions League quarterfinals. Sam, I mean, by this point, what a ridiculous performance. I mean, not just in La Liga, but now he's doing it in Europe. Graham's talking about, just the illustrious way that he's scoring, celebrating. The team is all behind him. Everybody's now watching. This is a pivotal moment for Lionel Messi.
Yeah, I mean, just touching on that 08-09 final, like you say, that was obviously against United with Ronaldo still there, and it's kind of the start of the Ronaldo-Messi years, I guess, if you will, and then Ronaldo comes to Madrid in 2009. But I just wanted to ask Graham about that 09-10 season, because my memory is maybe a little bit sketchy, because obviously that's the season when Samuel Eto'o leaves. Guardiola wasn't sure on him from the first season, and they signed Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and obviously there's been a lot of sort of reporting since about, the Zlatan Pep dynamic, especially the Zlatan dynamic with the other Barca players, how that sort of what his memory is of the time of sort of how Zlatan came in and how that affected Messi. Because obviously we spoke about Messi playing as a false nine. You've then got Zlatan coming in, and he wasn't such a big character back then as he is now, and as he's become in the years since. I don't think. I mean, he's obviously always been a big character, but not perhaps as he was at that point. And how that sort of dynamic changed. It certainly didn't affect Messi. It doesn't seem by numbers and performances.
Quick throwaway then on that season. The thing that abides with me really, really strongly is the way in which, unlike anything Messi had ever done, Zlatan disobeyed rules, misbehaved on holiday, couldn't understand the system. Literally was, well, why doesn't it all come through me? He'd opted to, it was one of the worst pieces of business that Barcelona have ever done, giving Eto'o to Inter Milan, and Eto'o then won back-to-back trebles. Nobody's ever done that. Two different teams, back-to-back trebles. And Zlatan, he gave an interview for Champions Magazine early on, and he was like, I had to come here. This is the best football. This will be the best football forever. This is where I belong. And he didn't. And Sam's comparison there is interesting because, as well as being, for my taste, Zlatan has a mouth as big as the Pacific Ocean, but his heart and character compared to Messi is like a pea. Messi was less dramatic publicly, I agree with you, Sam, but inside the dressing room, he was as hard and as demanding, but everything computed for him. He understood everything, which Zlatan couldn't. I think that helps separate them. And if you think about the way in which ultimately Zlatan is of no use to them by the time they miss out the chance of going back-to-back Champions League wins, and I think they would plainly have won the Champions League final against Bayern Munich at Bernabeu, if I'm not mistaken, had they not lost to Inter Milan, and the situation's all for the volcano in Iceland and they have to travel by bus and so on. But by that stage of the season, Zlatan has become, he's been replaced by Bojan. He's become a magnifying glass to put upon Messi's skills, Messi's contributions, Messi's leadership, Messi's ability to adapt, and Zlatan couldn't. Nobody's arguing here that Zlatan's one of the great players of all time.
Didn't want to.
I'm because we're on ESPN. I'm choosing the adjectives I use very carefully because I would use very, very pungent language about him.
I know.
My Pacific Ocean big mouth thing gives you a guide, Rodri. And he got lost. Listen, all of us live and work in football. Messi will come to, in the season I think is his great, well, I'm going to argue is his greatest, comes to a Zlatan Pep moment where he falls out nose to nose with the coach. And at the end of the season, they win the treble. In that instance, Sam introduced. Zlatan gets lost in a me and you argument. Messi gets into me v you arguments, but never loses them and never gets lost.
But sorry for this, Eleni, but Zlatan Ibrahimovic's case was very important, first of all, for Leo Messi, and secondly, for Pep Guardiola, because it made them easier when they were going to sign any big striker, because any striker, maybe we can take, for example, David Villa example, they knew that they had to adapt to Pep Guardiola, to Barca, and indeed to Leo Messi's way of style. And that's why, for me, unfortunately, because I was in love with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but he was key in that Barcelona performances, because from his case, he was like, okay, now is Messi the only guy that you have to respect and you have to adapt to that kind of game. So that's why, David Villa or Alexis Sanchez or all the big names that they joined to Barca after Zlatan, they knew what they had to do.
So it's a great point as well. There's a pivotal moment, as you say, Rodri, there for Pep Guardiola, because if you're going to play the Pep way, he has handled so many great world-class players from that day and now as well. But if you play for Pep Guardiola, you work to his disciplines. You don't go nightclubbing. There were days that we go cover the games in Barcelona, and the Brazilian players particularly will be rolling out of nightclubs at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, same time as us, by the way. And then when Ibrahimovic came in as well, you play to the Ibrahimovic way. You buy into him. And Pep Guardiola wasn't doing that. He was pointing to the little guy in the corner and saying, if you want to play for this club, and this will happen for the next 15 years as well, you have to adhere to the disciplines that he has this setting. You have to be the ultimate professional. You turn up on time. You give the ball when I ask you to give the ball. You play the way. And then we're going to be talking later on about Suarez and Neymar coming and the other great players that have signed for both Barcelona since. But all of those players have behaved perfectly as a professional, maybe because of that pivotal moment when he signed Ibrahimovic and he didn't fit the Barcelona style and the Pep style. And that was it. Ibra went off and he's been a brilliant player, one of the best there's ever been. But Pep Guardiola would say, no, you're going to behave like Messi if you play for this club. And any kid that comes through now, we're going to maybe talk about Lamine Yamal. He's following the path of Lionel Messi and not following the path of Zlatan Ibrahimovic in the way that he behaves himself.
Not coincidentally enough, Lamine Yamal's also success maybe this season could be done by the discipline of Hansi Flick, which discipline was something obviously that Pep Guardiola instilled. I mean, let's go back to this timeline. Things keep getting better, by the way, for Leo in 2010, 2011, back-to-back Ballon d'Or awards, a Champions League victory, the third consecutive league title in Spanish football. The number of goal contributions, everybody, starts to get silly now. 53 goals, 27 assists, 80 goal contributions in 55 matches. He was a machine, but it is a game where he didn't score, but did assist too. And he did just do everything, including being kicked late by a furious Sergio Ramos to spark a massive brawl in that match. Rob, I don't know if you remember that massive brawl that happened when you commentated on it.
Only vaguely. I just remember pretty much every time Sergio Ramos played against Lionel Messi, he dug very deep into the book of dark arts. He tried everything over the years to stop Lionel Messi. And I think the one great thing about Messi that sets him apart from any other player is that when somebody kicked him, the harder he went down, the harder he bounced back up again. I mean, as kids, we used to have weebles. You used to knock them over and they'd come back up. And that was Lionel Messi. Never showed any emotion, would just get up and shrug his shoulders and give a half smile to Sergio Ramos and continue. And that just made Ramos angrier and angrier.
Which is always fun to see for some people. But the Champions League victory saw Messi score and celebrate more wildly than usual. He kicked a pitchside mic and the advertising hoarding as he sprinted to celebrate in front of the Barcelona fans. Graham, why? I mean, it seemed obviously that it meant so much more to him in that Champions League victory at that point of his career, at least.
Helene, I'm glad you raised it because, like, for what to me, apart from it being beautiful, and no matter how many years you spend in it, it's a perpetual mystery, I think, and that's why we have to ask good questions, and it's why often we should remain surprised by the answers if we're paying attention. If you remember, they get there over the two Clasico semi-finals. Messi scored, and at that point, the goal I treasured most is having been there and watched it, where he runs off the pitch against Madrid and finishes off his right foot. And they get to the final. They travel early, remember, because they'd had the experience of not being able to fly the year before, so they go really early. Live down, I think, in Chelsea Harbour. They train at Arsenal's North London workout space. And everybody afterwards, including Ferguson afterwards at Wembley says, nobody's ever given us a beating like that. This is a direct quote. Everybody that I've ever talked to, Manchester United fans on the night, text me, we don't mind. Numerous. When a team's playing like that, we don't. And I wrote in my book about Barcelona about that. I've never ever seen a flow of voices, ex-pros, ex-coaches, legends everywhere around the world saying, that's the best, never seen anything like it, what the structure. And Messi didn't feel like that. We've asked him for take the ball, pass the ball, and he said, nerves. He said, at that stage, we felt on top, but we didn't know we were going to win, because that was a 2-1 goal, right? Villa's the third goal. It's a 2-1 goal. And at that stage, I think people like us who aren't there in the Champions League final on the pitch can imagine, well, yeah, this is inevitable. It's a procession. They're much. Well, hold on. Messi said that the celebration was that he'd been feeling nervous about winning that game. And the ball goes in and he kicks I don't know if it was a badger or a piece of recording equipment. I don't know which it was. He goes absolutely crazy. His face is contorted. Partly that's to do with now maybe we can win. We think he's invincible. He performs as if he's invincible. He didn't feel like that in that moment, according to what he told us.
Talking to a player the night before that final, I remember, I was at the hotel where Barcelona was staying at, and I remember one of Barcelona players, he talked to me that since they had won Manchester United in the previous final, I think it was like 2 years ago, they were like, okay, we are facing this game with Leo Messi as a proof for us, and indeed for Leo, to say, okay, here we are, and we are make of Barcelona a greatness team. Like, for example, Real Madrid before, or even Manchester United, because they were facing again Manchester United, and they knew that history was with Manchester United, with Alex Ferguson, and with all the big names that Manchester United used to have at that time. And they were like, okay, if we win, we are going to be at that level, at that history level. And this is really important for us, but for Messi indeed, because they were, all of the players, they wanted to be with Leo Messi, trying to hold him up high in order to say, you're going to be the best football player in the world, and you're going to prove it this here at Wembley Stadium against Manchester United. And that's why, apart from what Graham said, I think he celebrated that goal in that way, because we all thought that he was Iceman in that terms, and that is why, everyone at Barcelona were that, high and that push again against Manchester United, because they had that game, as a key moment for their careers.
Yeah, it was, I think I remember Rio Ferdinand almost describing it as an almost cathartic experience, just like I'm trying to understand like what was being witnessed. And if we stick back here to the timeline, how do you even talk about 2011, 2012? 73 goals, 32 assists in just 60 matches, 10 hat-tricks in all competitions. Messi scores 5 in a Champions League knockout game and 4 goals in a game twice in the season in La Liga. 50 of those goals, by the way, came in a campaign where Barcelona finished 9 points behind Real Madrid. I want everybody to just quickly give me just from context, what was it like to watch Messi that year?
Do you know what? It was as intense as football ever gets. I remember watching that and Pep Guardiola's head that season almost exploding. I've been in a position before when I was at the Kenny Dalglish press conference when we knew he was going to resign. We knew at that point that Pep was giving absolutely everything. He looked like the guy that was going flat out to a marathon, and once he got to the line, that Pep was going to kind of step over that line and probably not come back after it as well. But we'll all pick our best season. But that was where. Yeah, the records, Messi, most goals in the season, Barcelona's all-time record. They gave their absolute everything that season. And every time you watch them, you felt the intensity coming through your TV screen, or if you're at the stadium as well, this electrifying atmosphere. It was just an incredible time to be alive as well. But I don't think it was ever going to be repeated after that season, because they just gave absolutely everything.
They did. And how can you follow up a season like that, especially when the manager has guided you to 14 trophies in 4 seasons? He leaves as Pep Guardiola decides to go on a sabbatical. Well, in 2012, 2013, Messi personally had to settle for just 60 goals and 17 assists in all competitions. He wins his 4th Ballon d'Or, his 4th consecutive, by the way. Wrestled La Liga back with from Real Madrid, scoring in 19 straight matches before injury breaks that run. And this is the season, Sam Marsden, where Barcelona's dependence on Messi, or Messi dependencia, as it was coined, kind of really starts to show, right?
Yeah, it's an awkward season to assess, really, because of all the problems that Barca had with, obviously, coach Tito Vilanova in the second half of the season. Guardiola's number 2, who had replaced him. And even though they were still sort of, battering teams, they obviously had some low moments off the pitch with everything that's going on with the coach, Jordi Alba coming in for the second half of the season, and also in the Champions League, a heavy defeat to Bayern Munich. So even though it's hard to, because obviously it's difficult to separate the team from Messi. So even though Messi's scoring all these goals, I remember sort of, the last year of the, obviously, disappointment in the last year of Guardiola in terms of the league and the Champions League as well. And this season with the Tito stuff, even though they get a 100-point season, it still feels like kind of like a middle period between those early Guardiola years and then what to come to under Luis Enrique. Obviously, Tata comes in the following season. So even though, like you said, there was that run of games where he scored against every single La Liga side, 19 games, which is brutal. The goals, the Ballon d'Ors keep on coming. Discussing
that era, 2013, 2014, is a disappointment by Messi standards, despite the fact that he was joined by Neymar at the Camp Nou. But as you mentioned, Sam, Pep's replacement, Tito Vilanova, stepped down after one season.
If we're coming on to that season, I think that this is probably the time you talk about the Messi dependence on the team. It's probably the time that, and I don't think Messi ever spoke about this publicly, but obviously Tata Martino comes in. It's probably around that time, Graham maybe correct me, maybe there was stuff before where you start to say not just Messi dependence on the team, but this idea that Messi has more power than he perhaps does have, or people want to sell this idea that he's able to pull certain strings that perhaps should be being pulled by the decision makers is around this sort of time as well.
41 goals in 46 matches, only enough for an early season Supercopa victory, losing the title in La Liga on the final day to Atletico de Madrid. Cholo Simeone's men also knocked them out at the quarterfinals of the Champions League in that time. And at the end of this season, there are the first real murmurings of a potential departure, Graham Hunter, with Messi unhappy at feeling blamed for the poor performances of the team that year. Was he ever close to leaving?
In my opinion, no. I think if you want to focus on his dissatisfaction, and Sam's point about this is the real genesis of when Messi, in word and action, demonstrates that this is my club. Cross me if you dare. But it's what's good for you. If you overdo it, can kill you. And I think that's what we're beginning to talk about. That under Tata Martino, for sure, Messi begins to get the right to dictate timings of training and what the team is doing. And that's not good for any footballer. It doesn't matter that maybe we all agree. I certainly believe he is, by a huge distance, the greatest footballer of all time. And I mean, Maradona's not in the discussion, pound for pound. But even that person can't have as much power as Messi was. And it wasn't some sort of martinet. It was by demonstration of, you need me, I have the power seat, I want this, that, and the next thing. But the difficulty is most players that behave like that then drop their standards. And largely he didn't. The team was dropping its standards, and therefore maybe it was very useful that such a harsh change was about to come into his and their life. One of the toughest relationships he's had, which was with Luis Enrique Martinez.
I think change needed to be made as well, because as you quite rightly say there, that, after Pep, it was going to be impossible to follow. And then Tata Martino, they brought the coach in that he wanted, the coach that I guess he'd selected. And I would imagine that Tata was ringing up Lionel Messi at night. So what do we do tomorrow? What time do we train? And it, as you say, was independent. Messi was maybe independent of the team, and the team were dependent on Lionel Messi at that time. And it was a pivotal moment again for Barcelona at that point, because they could have stuck with Tata, and Messi could have been running the club as well. But they took a big decision, and it needed Messi not to be the strongest voice in the changing room, because he was running the show at that point. And as you say, they went off in a different direction after that when Luis Enrique came in. And again, they had a boss in the changing room, and somebody who had to be dictated to, or was dictating what was going on within the training ground.
I was lucky enough by that time because, I was the only Spanish speech reporter that was maybe 3, 4, 5 meters away from Messi in any single game. And I remember, the difference in between that Leo Messi of that Tata Martino season, against any Pep Guardiola or Tito Villanova season. It was a frustrated Leo Messi. And I agree with Graham because I don't believe that he never wanted to quit FC Barcelona, but at the same time, he realized that he wanted to change something. There is a conversation in between Tata Martino and Leo Messi, because by that time, Leo Messi was unstoppable. I mean, he felt like a godlike genius, and he knew that. And there's a conversation where Tata Martino tells Messi, I know that you rule the club, but don't prove it to me every single day. And that is something that made a click inside Leo Messi's mind to say, okay, I know that I didn't behave properly with Tata Martino, apart from being one of Leo Messi's names that he put on the table to replace Tito Villanova. But at the same time, he was like, we need a change because we don't agree with Tata Martino's tactics. We know that they are a very old school coach. And Barcelona, if we want to win, we need something else. So that's why I think they, Sandro Rosell and Bartomeu did a great, choice with Luis Enrique, because he was maybe the closest coach to Pep Guardiola in order to take those tactic backs and in order to take that discipline back, because that was something that even Leo Messi wanted, that they need him.
I totally echo that sentiment. Luis Enrique, I think, was the closest to trying to emulate all the cultural strategies, philosophies that Pep Guardiola established. He arrives, and with him, by the way, Lucho Suarez comes from Liverpool as well. And Messi is red hot all season as 1/3 of MSN. 89 goal contributions, including 43 goals in La Liga, as Barcelona, under Luis Enrique, win the treble, or the Champions League, La Liga, Copa del Rey. All is not well, though, as it is suggested that his relationship with Luis Enrique is not good.
This is probably, I don't know if it's the best, but it's certainly perhaps my favourite season that we're going to discuss, because of the change, because of the narrative, because of the ending. It came to a head with Luis Enrique. Like you say, there was a game against Real Sociedad. I think it was just after Christmas, and they lost 1-0, and Messi was left on the bench, and there was a rupture in the relationship with Luis Enrique, and Xavi had to step in, I think it was. I think Graham's going to...
It's all true. But it's making me laugh because the big problem, Sam, started in training.
Yeah.
In the build-up to the game against La Real, Luis Enrique, I think it's a mistake, was acting as referee. I think he didn't give a foul or an offside, and Leo lost his brown stuff, completely. They went nose to nose. It was hyper-aggression before, as you say, because you're painting the picture of, I think, Alves and Neymar sitting on the bench and smirking as La Real go 1-0 up. But the tension about who's the master, who's the boss, and also Leo had always in training, if something happened against him, there was a reaction of some sort or another. And this was a volcano one before that game. And I know 100% certain that Leo Messi's words were, "It's me or the coach," to the president. "It's me or the coach." And Xavi, I butted in where you had it right. Xavi was the peacemaker, right?
Xavi stepped in. I mean, the day after that Real Sociedad game as well, I think it was, all that week, Andoni Zubizarreta and Carlos Puyol stepped down as sporting directors as well, sort of in the fallout from that game. Yeah,
I mean, it was as you say, Sam, such an interesting time, because with success came a lot of tension.
Yeah, it kind of was a fusion of two things, because obviously you had that Messi, Luis Enrique situation, but you also had Suarez, who'd come in and he'd been banned for the first half of the season. He came back for the Clasico. He played on the right to accommodate Messi, sort of in the false nine role, and it wasn't quite clicking those early months. Suarez took a long time to score. I think his first goal came in December, maybe in the Champions League. And there were doubts about whether you could play with Neymar, Suarez, and Messi. Then you had the Messi Enrique situation, and you're going into sort of the turn of the year thinking, is Luis Enrique going to get sacked? What's going to happen? How's this all going to work? And then after that situation in Real Sociedad, I think it was the Copa del Rey game against Atletico Madrid. They won 3-1 at Camp Nou, and all three of them scored. And there's a photo of Messi, Suarez, and Neymar all celebrating arm in arm. By which point, they'd self-managed in the game one time. I think Messi's told the story of Suarez, where they realised it made more sense for Suarez to come into the middle and Messi to go back to the right. And then from there, that calendar year, 2015, it sort of dipped off in the final 18 months under Luis Enrique, or 2.5 seasons. It wasn't quite the same. But that 2015, up until winning the treble and the start of the next season, it was just every game was sort of scintillating. You didn't know what to expect from those three. And you sort of saw the goal scorer Messi, but you also saw this unselfish Messi who was willing to sort of step back and give the ball to Neymar and let him do his thing and play and set up Suarez and share penalties around and do little penalties where they pass to each other, and they were just enjoying themselves. It was just an incredible year.
Yeah, it was probably the first time. I mean, obviously he has had friendships before, but it was probably the first time he's had close friendships where there may be something, especially on the pitch, there was this chemistry. And Rodri, there were some memorable moments, as Sam was talking about, 6 hat tricks, but the 2015 Champions League semi-final against Bayern Munich, that will probably be most remembered, gaining some revenge, I guess, for German defeat in the World Cup the previous summer.
Yeah, I do agree. You know, when you do something against Leo Messi, he's always going to remember. And you know, I mean, that's something that is just a fact. And yeah, I mean, that night was just brilliant. Was the kind of night that that Leo Messi was like, I am the man, I am the one, I am the chosen one, and I want to be adored. You know, like Stone Roses song, as you may know, Graham. But you know, that's why Messi in those kind of games he feels so comfortable. You know, up to this date, even when he plays with Inter Miami, you know, he's like, okay, this game ain't gonna be much better, and I'm gonna prove you all that I am Leo Messi still. So you know, by that time, when you look back at what he did at that night, it was just amazing. And I remember a couple of teammates in the mix zone after the game telling me that, I mean, this is incredible, and we as a teammates, we are enjoying what he's doing at the pitch. You know, like we were a spectator on the stand. So that's why, you know, he made everyone laugh, he made everyone smile, and he made everyone enjoy the kind of game, you know, against Bayern Munich, because you know he was feeling that was a key moment after all the struggling of that year that he wanted to achieve, and he wanted to win another Champions League trophy. That I think it was the last one, you know, after all.
Yeah, and you can't talk about that.
Go.
No, I was just going to say, you can't really talk about that Bayern game without mentioning Boateng and the meme content we had for years of him falling down the hole. That was an incredible Messi night, yeah. And also just that Champions League. They beat the champions of England, champions of France, champions of Germany, and the champions of Italy. A pure Champions League win.
I was going to say, Rodri, you don't have to sell your soul like that. And we all knew it was the roses. But if you're in Camp Nou that night, I swear, I mean, it's vital to set the picture, because it's not just Bayern Munich, it's Pep's Bayern Munich. And there's the master pupil thing, which inspires all of us, I guess, but above all, Leo Messi, like, and I'm not gonna have you putting your thumb on top of me and pushing you down. And if you were at that game, if you watched that game, Camp Nou is full. It sometimes has too much of a reputation because it's Camp Nou, but this night it's a torrent of noise, it's a torrent of tension. It's the first leg, and it's a chess game where there is nothing to separate them for. I can't remember when Leo's goal comes, maybe 79, or I think they score 3 if you include added time in the last 15. But it's a high stakes match where everybody's both teams were trying to win. Lewandowski misses right in front of goal, but each team knows that the first mistake and you'll be done. And the first mistake probably comes from Bernat, and then Messi turns Boateng inside out. Fine, but then the instant that they've got Bayern Munich on the rack, Messi goes, now we smash them. Now we take them apart. Now we leave this tie dead. And he takes control of this short space of time with his two pals. Neymar, fine. Suarez and Messi were born with the same brain. How to compete, what's funny, how to humiliate people, and what are you going to do? What I'm going to do? We don't need to look. We don't need to talk. We don't need to think. And it was, in my opinion, that would be, along with the moment when Italy beat Germany in Dortmund in the semi-final 2006. That's my tightest non-Aberdeen 15 minutes of football I've ever been at, and it was just like the splitting of the atom. It was just gorgeous. The reason we love football.
Yeah, and the beautiful way in how all of you have been describing this period encapsulates two key things, which is the relationship between Messi dependencia and MSN, because, you know, Messi dependencia is truly tested in 2015, 2016 when Messi's out for a month. He ends the season with 41 goals in all competitions. But, you know, the MSN trio hits 131 goals. They win La Liga, the Club World Cup, Copa del Rey. There's no hat tricks in Liga, but then moving on in 2016, 2017, Messi does win Pichichi again, the 37 league goals in the final year, by the way, of Luis Enrique and MSN in Barcelona. There's a Copa del Rey triumph. Doesn't change the mood. But let's focus, Rob, back on Messi, Neymar, and the remontada against PSG in the Champions League last 16. What a tremendous performance there. Just another example of just how valuable this time was, specifically as Graham was talking about, these two chums next to him.
Yeah, I think you've got to you look at it at that point, and Paris Saint-Germain were building themselves as a world giant at that point, and they want to test themselves against the very, very best. I think when we look back and we look at our favourite period or our Messi independent period, this is when it was. Messi, I think, had to mature. You talk about the Luis Enrique, and when you look at the history of Barcelona, it could have gone one of two ways. You could have had the Pep Guardiola years, and you'd had the Cruyff years, and then you go into the wilderness. And then when he had that fallout with Luis Enrique, and Luis Enrique comes back at Messi and tests him. And there was a different way that Barcelona played as well. You think about the Pep Guardiola days. It was the tippy-tappy towards the end of the Pep days. It was almost boring to watch. If I'd say they'd go in, they'd dip their toe in the water, they'd come out. With Luis Enrique, they invented a way of playing as well. And I remember doing a game with Michael Laudrup as my co-commentator. He said, just look at Messi. And at that point, Messi wasn't really pinned down to position. With Neymar and Suarez doing their thing, Messi would spend the first 10 minutes of matches. There's so many late goals. And he would almost be there. And then all of a sudden, he'd be like a mosquito that you're watching in the room. He'd be here. And then he'd be somewhere else in the sill as well. And it was at that point that Messi, I think he really, really matured. And that's where he really, really came into his own as well. And those were the peak years where he'd gone from this guy who had an ego. He'd been as a wonder kid, then the ego. And at this point, he was the master.
He was the master, and as we find out in the future, the leader now, because 2017-2018 was another fantastic season for Leo. 45 goals, 20 assists. He signs a new contract mid-season with a buyout clause of 700 million euros inserted. That's pittance in this day and age, but not in 2017-2018. And he's never been a big one for speaking, but with Andres Iniesta leaving at the end of the season, he's handed the club captaincy, Sam Marsden.
I think these are probably, if we talk about maybe there are other the odd season, I think if we talk about Messi dependence, I think these are probably the two seasons when the team was so sort of reliant on him, can we say? They obviously won back-to-back league titles under Valverde. You had the summer of 2017 when they lost Neymar in August, just before the season started. Obviously, Dembele came in and got injured. Coutinho didn't come in until mid-season. So Valverde had a lot to deal with. And basically, you had Messi, Suarez, and then you had people working behind him. I think Paulinho came in for the first season. You had Rakitic, and Iniesta was still there 17-18 and then gone. But it was kind of, I think even Barca's social media at the time did a tweet which got sort of slightly criticised, but was probably true. But you can't say it if you're the club, which is basically like, this is our team. And it was like Ter Stegen, who was making all the saves, and Messi, who was doing all the work. Suarez still popped up. Just when you thought Suarez was not going to do anything, he would still pop up with the odd goal and stuff. But in games, he often sort of went missing. And you had these two seasons where Barca were really dependent on Messi. And even so, that 17-18 season, they would have gone unbeaten if they wanted to. They lost just one game to Levante when they'd already won the league. And the reason, well, who knows if they'd lost to Levante or not. But they had a friendly in South Africa, which was for some money. And for that Levante game, they made a few changes. I ended up losing, I think it was 5-4. I think Coutinho scored a hat-trick. But if they really wanted to, I'm sure they could have won that game and gone the whole season unbeaten. But these two seasons are tempered by what happened in the Champions League, really, because they had so much success domestically under Valverde. But they obviously had those big, defeats to Roma and then to Liverpool, where they were in commanding positions and were not able to convert in the second leg. Which comes back again a little bit to the dependence on Messi. If Messi doesn't deliver, who else steps up in those games? Obviously, those games are very different. What happened? I know Rakitic has spoken a little bit about absolute hunger in recent weeks. But Barca were a little bit, they were not carrying Messi and Suarez, but in terms of they'd become very much sort of less mobile, less sort of in terms of their work rate and whatnot. And if those two didn't deliver, it was very much sort of, and it was going to be difficult for Barca. So those seasons were sort of tempered really by those big disappointments in the Champions League, which have marked Barca for so many years since as well.
They'd made him a captain, but they made him a captain of a ship that was sinking very slowly, wasn't it, as we now know. And Valverde did remarkably well to keep them afloat, but as we know, next couple of years, they did sink.
Yeah, and let's not forget, it was a ship that was sinking, but Messi kept trying to get water out of the boat because he did have in 2018, 2019, it was his sixth 50-goal-plus season as he won his 10th La Liga title, but there was a lot of issues going on as well in terms of the individual responsibilities of Leo as well. But, Graham, we got to talk about, at this point, we're not talking about a 19-year-old Leo Messi anymore. There's, obviously he's still young, but there's somebody that throughout the changes around him there is just so much longevity here, so much consistency. And we're wondering now, like, is he going to be here forever? How long will he last? Like, what is the perception of Messi at this point?
Yeah, okay, but I don't know if our brief is to be brutally honest as well as full of praise.
Please, that's all I ask.
Well, then he has to accept his fingerprints on a lot of the decline. Not because he actively sought that, but because, particularly he and Suarez, any of us who were at training in those days, the team would come out and be early, a few minutes early for training, and then we'd wait, and sometimes it would be bang on 11, and sometimes it would be 5 or 6 minutes past 11, and you'd hear the clatter of aluminium studs down in the concrete part of the stairs, and up they'd come, and perennially they'd be the last two out. And there wasn't utter defiance of standards, but it was like, we rule. And across this, you all talked about moments of brilliance. Suarez would still pop up. Messi was the captain, and there were trophies there, and there were moments of sublime football. That last minute winner at Bernabeu, and the game I think was 4-3. You could still pick out pockets and say that fits in everything we've been talking about for 20 years. But you can also, without question, in my view, say they corroded, both of them, Suarez and Messi, corroded that absolute discipline, which can make the millimetrical difference between not playing well in the first leg against Rome, but then not collapsing in the Olympic Stadium. It can make the difference a year later between being outplayed by Liverpool at Camp Nou, but Messi and Suarez go, no, we will do it. That night at Camp Nou, again, was one of the biggest reverses of what we saw compared to what the scoreline was. And one of the things that frustrated Messi a lot, because he took Dembele under his wing. He tried to teach him. I hugely remember a game against Chelsea in the Champions League where Messi was ordering Dembele where to play and when, and then serving him. If you do this, it was Field of Dreams. If you move there, the goal will come because I will give it to you. And he gives one on a plate to Dembele at the end of the Liverpool game where they easily Liverpool could have won in the first game. It's 3-0. Going for 4-0 to Liverpool overturn 4-0 at Anfield, we don't know because maybe. But in the end, they don't have to. And that moment there summed up the dichotomy of where Messi was already arguably the all-time great. The more evidence is coming, particularly internationally. And he was the boss and he desperately wanted to win another Champions League. But something in him went, I'll give this to Dembele because maybe he's in a better position. That generosity, one of us was talking about the mix between me, the goal scorer, the dependence, but still I'm a team man. And he gives it, and Dembele fluffs it and misses it. And Suarez and Messi look at each other going, what did we just see, man? And that was Dembele because not everything's wired up. But it was also Messi. Like he didn't need to give it to him necessarily. He did. It's a miss. They go out. And for my taste, there was a moment where in the training camps, but also in the club, everybody had their attention millimetrically off what makes greatness dominant.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because of all these issues that we're talking about, the sinking ship and Messi having to try and, as you mentioned, Graham, take some sort of responsibility in the decline. 2019, 2020 is disrupted as COVID-19, stops the world and all of football for 3 months. Real Madrid with win La Liga and Barcelona are embarrassed by Bayern Munich 8-2 in the quarterfinals of the Champions League in Lisbon. Messi then tells Barcelona by the famous burofax he wants to leave before making a U-turn 2 weeks later. Rodri, how badly had things been broken down by this point for this burofax to come out? He makes a U-turn, but we clearly know that, the writing is on the wall.
Well, for me, that was the only time, during Messi's career at Barca where he really wanted to leave. I remember that burofax news, though. I mean, we reported first as an exclusive on ESPN. And I remember, when I got the news and with Moy and Sam and all the crew, we were all like amazed, by the way Leo Messi was pushing hard FC Barcelona and Bartomeu to say, I want to leave. I do want to leave. I want to quit my dream of getting another Champions League trophy for Barcelona. I want to leave. And I remember that he had everything settled and prepared and ready to join Manchester City. And yes, in less than 15 days, I mean, everything turned again, and he stayed because Bartomeu didn't want to be the president of FC Barcelona, letting Messi leave the club. So that is why, I mean, he didn't leave. But anyway, it was really hard for Leo Messi because he was like, trying to be on his mind, according to what my sources around Leo Messi were telling me. He was fed up with everything. He was tired of trying to get all the teammates, as Brian said about Dembélé and some other cases. He was tired to say, okay, we got to be at this level. We got to do this. And he wasn't asking his teammates to make what he was doing. He just wanted, some Pedros, some Villas, some standard people to say they can be better with me and we can get major trophies if we do that. And he was tired of everything. He was tired of that. He was tired of the coaches that Bartomeu was hiring, because the next one was going to be Setien, that he was a major disaster for Leo Messi and for Barcelona's history. And at the end of the day, he was like unhappy. And it was the first time that I really see Leo Messi unhappy playing for Barcelona. And it was like, that was my dream, but it's not my dream anymore.
Yeah, heavy lies the crown. Indeed. His final season in La Liga ends with 30 goals and a third-place finish. There is one final title in the Cup, Copa del Rey, under the new boss, Ronald Koeman. In January 2021, El Mundo published that Messi's final 4-year contract is worth over €500 million and has ruined Barcelona's finances. And Sam, it's Barcelona's finances that ultimately are the cause of ending Messi's time at the club. Remind us just of that July 2021. I remember it so vividly. The world of football kind of shook. But it was also, as Rodri was saying, and Graham was talking about, and Rob talking about the sinking ship. This was coming, but it's just July 2021. Now this was real. Barcelona's finances were completely ruined. Messi was on his way. Can you just reflect on that a little bit?
Yes, well, so like Rodri says, I think 2020 is definitely the year when Lionel Messi most wanted to leave. Obviously, there are different versions from 2021. The official line is obviously he didn't want to leave as his contract was extending. He still had a good season. Like you say, Barca they got themselves into a position under Ronald Koeman, despite, the 8-2 to Bayern the season before, Suarez, heading out, a load of players leaving, a load of new players coming through. There was real sort of shoots of positivity in the relationship Messi had with sort of Pedri on the pitch. I remember certain games against Valladolid and certain things where you could see that was a really promising relationship. And obviously they lost to Granada at home and ended up throwing away the league, which they got themselves into a position to win. But they'd won the Copa del Rey with a lot of youngsters, and it was sold this idea this was a young team that could come together. Laporta had come back in as the president and, had hugged a Messi mannequin and said, I'm the man to keep Messi at the club. And then, like you say, in July, had there been, I can't remember what there had been that summer in 2021 because everything got a bit put out. Had there been a Copa America because of had he won his first Copa America with Argentina that summer? And I think he'd been in Ibiza and he was supposed to be coming back to Barcelona to sign his new deal. And obviously it all broke down because of, different reasons to do with Barca's finances and the deal with La Liga they didn't want to be part of, to do with selling television rights and whatnot, which Laporta said they'd had to have signed to renew his deal. It was hard to believe at first. Like you said, you were wondering, is this some sort of negotiating tactic? Is it some other thing? What's going on? Surely Messi can't leave. Surely in a week they're gonna reverse. But with every step, it became more and more real. Even on the day of his news conference, when he announced that he was leaving and it was the end and stuff, you're still thinking, like, is there a chance? Could they do something? Could he stay? Is there anything that they can pull out of the hat here? But no, it's such when you think of everything we spoke about over the last hour or whatnot, for it to end the way it did is diabolical, really. With the restrictions of COVID still at the time and stuff, that season, his last season, been played mostly in empty stadiums. I think at the end there was some slight percentage allowed back, or maybe not in La Liga actually. Maybe I'm getting confused because journalists were slightly allowed back at the end, but not fans. And then to go out with no big send off with the fans, it was horrible.
It was A horrible time for Barcelona fans, a very weird time for the footballing world, but it was the reality. And in August 2021, on the 10th of August, Lionel Messi joined Paris Saint-Germain, reuniting him with Neymar and bringing him together with Kylian Mbappe. He was brought in with the aim of helping PSG earn finally a Champions League title, as well as obviously grow the brand that is PSG. While he won back-to-back Ligue 1 titles, they fell at the round of 16 in both years. He was in Paris. And our very own Julien Laurens explains why it never really worked out for Messi in Paris.
I think the main reason why it didn't work out is because this team where Messi was in with Neymar and Mbappe especially, but the rest of the one was just not good enough overall, collectively as a team, to be able to perform well. There's the two Ligue 1 titles, but that was almost a given for them if you have Messi in your team to win that. But in the Champions League, we saw the limits of that team. We saw the limits that what Messi could do at that level, because in both campaigns in Europe and both games in the last 16, whether it was Bayern Munich or whether it was Real Madrid, there was just not enough of him, especially against the Bayern Munich game in the second season, that I think he struggled, and it was a team that was not built correctly in the sense that outside of that front three, incredible front three on paper, with those three superstars, there's just one ball for them to share, which always they found it quite difficult, and the rest of the team behind could not just defend with 8 players and try to get structured and stay structured tactically with 8 players. It was there was the 3 at the top and then the rest, and there was no cohesion in that team. That's the main reason why. Also the fact that injuries, I think, played a big part in Messi 2 seasons in Paris. We never actually see that much of that front three of Messi, Neymar and Mbappe. Neymar got injured. Messi had a few niggles there and there. And overall, if you look at the stats, the second season, especially in 41 games, 21 goals, 20 assists for Messi in all competitions, this is a good involvement per game. At his age, was pretty remarkable. Clearly, he wanted to get super fit and ready for the World Cup in November 2022 up to December 2022. So that first half of the season, 22-23, was obviously excellent. After that, when he came back as a world champion from Qatar with Argentina, there was not the same maybe focus from him on the PSG matches. And I think you could feel that he was not there anymore, really, that he wanted to leave. He was not very happy overall to live in Paris, to play for that team, to be in that club, too different from what he knew of Barcelona for all those years. So again, I think that was also a part of what he never felt too happy in Paris.
So I'll leave this open to everybody. Why do we think, it didn't work out in Paris, or the overall experience in Paris? I'll leave this open to you all.
I think it went from it being the Lionel Messi show to Messi being one of the co-stars as well, where they were used to playing around him, where suddenly you got Mbappe and you got Neymar, and Messi had come in and he wasn't the boss anymore. And also his ego had taken a bit of a battering as well. I mean, mentally, physically, okay, he could handle it, bounce back up, but mentally you have to think what he went through, the dependent years on Messi there, the changes of coaches there, the battling that he had behind the scenes as well. And since being a teenage boy on his growth hormones, he'd been brought up in the city of Barcelona, and suddenly he was moving lock, stock and barrel, family, kids, whatever, to Paris. And he just proved that, he was a great footballer. Still 11 goals, 14 assists, playing in a very, very good team, but showing that the guy, is a footballing god, but he's also a human being.
I think it didn't good because, despite the fact that 1 year ago he wanted to leave Barcelona in order to join Manchester City, by that time, it was completely the opposite. I mean, he wanted to stay. He thought that he was going to stay. And I remember when Barcelona reported us that there was going to be a major event at the FC Barcelona building, we all thought that he was going to renew. And I think that, that night or 2 nights before, he thought that he was going to renew his contract to FC Barcelona. And when he got the news that he was not going to be renewed after, that what Laporta did during the whole campaign in order to become another time president of Barcelona, hugging that Leo Messi doll, or whoever you call it in English. After all, he was like, oh no, now I'm going to leave. And now I'm going to leave to PSG when I don't want to leave, because I want to stay here and I want to be the leader of this new generation of youngsters, and I want to be here forever. And suddenly, it turns like from the sunny day to a dark day and a rainy day. And he said, okay, the only chance that now I have on the table is PSG, because they were wide open to let Leo Messi join to the squad. And he was like, okay, out of FC Barcelona, maybe I can join Manchester City. But it was too late for him. And I think that in between his father and the PSG, they got it, the deal, they got it done really, really quick and really fast. So he joined PSG. And that is why, at least in my opinion, why it didn't end that well. Because he didn't want to join PSG 100%, because he wanted to stay at Barcelona.
I back Roger 100% on that. It was a sour moment, a sour feeling. He felt betrayed. He was in a place that, and all of us know what his kids mean to him. And people listening can laugh a little bit and say, well, a professional footballer who earns this and who's won this shouldn't be. But his family, for the time they spent in Northern Europe, where it's cold more of the time, or it rains more of the time, if you're a footballer, 90% of the time coming home, you say to the family, we'll just put up with it. If you're Messi, not taking aside his relationship with his wife, but the kids are so central to him. And the family weren't happy, which is simply to add to Rodri's point. And he felt, I'm in the wrong place. This isn't me. I thought his goal total, the trophies they won, represented the fact that he's a guy who gets on with business and does the job. The squad, the managers weren't necessarily good enough to win the Champions League. But when your central core is not committed to where you are, the best thing you can say about the way in which he was betrayed at Barcelona, and he was betrayed, told come in, you're going to sign a new contract, gets there told you're out, you wouldn't treat one of your domestic cleaners that way. The best thing that can be said about all of that in the Paris Saint-Germain time was he brooded on how to be ready for the World Cup, how to scratch the other big itch. And you have to take that as a period where mentally and physically he was building to what we saw in Qatar. And that can be set as some sort of balance for what is one of the darkest episodes in Football Club Barcelona's history, in my opinion. You can run out of money. You can say it's time you think about playing somewhere else because you're too old or you're not performing. These terms can apply to anybody. But to lose him the way they did and to treat him the way they did, in my taste, was utterly wrong.
Yeah, spot on. A notable point regarding the family. People really do underestimate just how close Leo is with Antonella and those boys, and how they pretty much are the priority for everything. But in the end, after 2 seasons in Paris, Messi made the move to the US to join David Beckham's Inter Miami. Literally, our first question we had for him at ESPN was, how do you feel? I've never been happier. I'm back in Argentina without being in Argentina. He felt very close to that community. He would be joined by Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba, and of course, Tata Martino. Success was almost immediate, just as the US exploded with Messi mania, scoring 10 goals in 7 matches to help Inter Miami, a team that just recently invited to MLS, the worst team in the league, finally now are Leagues Cup champions, their first ever trophy. This season, while injuries have caused him to miss a significant chunk of matches since the Copa America injury, he is back. Still, Inter Miami are doing their thing. Luis Suarez is now there too. Top of the Eastern Conference, Supporters' Shield winners, and this weekend, if they win, they will beat their record in history in MLS for the most points in a season, and they look for the playoffs as well for their first ever MLS Cup. And by the way, Lionel Messi, even though all that time that he has missed, 15 goals, 17 assists, like already proven to be an MVP candidate. So things are good in Miami. But now, to wrap everything up, I mean, this has been an unbelievable debate, one of the best I've ever been a part of, by the way. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here, and everybody else as well that's watching and listening. Let's get to the serious part. Which season was Lionel Messi's best? Let's go to Rob first.
Oh, I think I might steal the thunder here of Sam. I do apologise. I'm going to go for the 14-15 season. I'll keep it brief. Luis Enrique was in charge. They signed Suarez. He had to find a way to play. They scored 122 goals between them. We've mentioned the 2 goals against Bayern Munich, and they needed his influence. We saw what Bayern did to them a few years later. If you're not at your very, very best as well, I think he scored the goal that clinched the season against Atletico Madrid in the league. They've won. Was it the three trophies again? And I guess then he was 27 to 28 years of age, so that you were talking about a footballing player who was that year at the total peak of his powers. But truthfully, you could just stick a pin in any year, because he succeeded every year that he played, even in America with the national team as well at the autumn of his career. But if you're going for me, I'm going right for the middle for 2014-15.
I love it. What do you think, Rodri?
Well, indeed, you can pick any season because, I mean, Messi is for me, the best footballer on history. But I'm going to pick 2010-2011. He scored 53 goals in 55 games. He won the league, and indeed he won the Champions League in the best performance I've ever seen with Leo Messi's team in his whole career. First of all, because they were playing at a high level. And secondly, because I remember, those celebrations we talked about before and how Leo Messi was focused on that game against Manchester United, winning them against the Red Devils, their second final UCL final, and I think that season, what I saw with Messi on the pitch, I mean, that was just insane, incredible, outstanding.
Sam?
Yeah, like Rob said, I was edging towards 14-15. If you look at the Guardiola years, I had 10-11 because of I guess 08-09 you had more success because they won the treble, and 11-12, we obviously scored more goals. But no, I had 10-11 because of what it came with, but 14-15 overall. I mean, if you look at every Messi season from 08-09 when Pep came in until 2020-21 when he left, it's basically a Ballon d'Or winning season. I know he didn't win it every season, but I think PK that said it regularly. I mean, every year Messi should have won the Ballon d'Or. So it's impossible to break down the season because you've also got those different sort of phases of his career, which we've obviously touched on throughout. I also had a shout out just for 17-18, that first year under Valverde when he sort of carried the team post Neymar. But I think probably recency bias in terms of the fact it was more recent than 10-11, and because I was here by this point and just witnessing it live, the 14-15 and how he sort of welcomed Suarez into the gang and got the best out of Neymar, and the narrative of the season was my favourite. I mean, to pick a greatest, you could pick any one of 2, 3, 4 based on the numbers and the achievements.
Yeah, there really is no wrong answer. Grav, let's wrap it up here. What do you think?
LME in bronze position, 2008-9, the first treble, partly on the podium because of how drunk he gets at the Camp Nou celebrations, dressed in a pixie hat, staggering about, promising to bring this success to the Catalans every year, slurring up Biscabar. Bronze. Silver, 10-11, because he put that ridiculous man Mourinho back in his box again and again, and I enjoyed that. But because I owe Leo Messi literally so much, and all of us do, but I owe him the professional advancement, the change in my football knowledge and vocabulary, watching him 25 or 26 interviews. I choose 14-15, no stats at all, for how joyful he found it. He played his greatest music with Neymar and Suarez. Suarez is probably his closest. It's like watching a man with two brains. So thank you, Steve Martin. 14-15, that treble, the joy on his face. And LME, I know what you talked about Inter Miami special. There's a book in it. Let me just give you that advice. There's a book in it. I don't know if you've given any thought to it. I don't know if you've given any thought to the fact that a quiz on Messi might be a good idea. But I'm going to get signed off here by asking all of you, only one man, only one footballer links Leo Messi's Barcelona debut against Espanyol on the Olympic Stadium up in Montjuic and his last ever game at Camp Nou in La Liga for Barcelona before leaving for Paris Saint-Germain, the 2-1 defeat against Celta Vigo. Only one footballer links those two games. Clues if you want them, but guesses when you want to.
Well, since I'm the host, I'm going to open it to everybody else to ask.
Come on.
Alba.
He's not Spanish. He was centre forward.
He's Catalan.
He's centre forward the day that Leo Messi makes his debut. And he was assistant coach the day that Messi plays his last ever game for Barca at Camp Nou.
Oh, no, I was trying to think of a player that would have been playing for Celta Vigo. I can't think who the assistant coach would have been.
And his nickname in Scotland was the King of Kings.
Go on.
Come on, Graham.
Sweden's all-time greatest striker.
Henrik Larsson.
Henrik Larsson, correct. Centre forward against Espanyol. 20 years
Bring
ago.
it back to the Scottish, don't they?
Today. And no, Henrik's not Scottish, love. And he was assistant coach to Koeman on that last, sad for Messi at least, defeat, his last match in Camp Nou for Barcelona. There you go.
Amazing stuff. Henrik Larsson, that beautiful man, who might as well be Scottish, by the way, according to many Celtic fans. Anyway, this has been unbelievable. Thank you so much, everybody. Sam Marsden, Graham Hunter, Rob Palmer, Rodrigo Faez, Luis Miguel Echegaray, Lionel Andres Messi, 20 years since his debut. And my God, what a debut, what a journey, and how lucky all of us are to continue to witness the absolute magic. Thank you so much for being part of this. We'll see you next time. Till then.